Hello YouTube, what's up? It's me, Amaxter. We're back with episode 10 of Behind the Mod. For this episode, we have Tech Brew joining us, who is the creator of JourneyMap. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, going pretty well. So, before we get started, how did you get involved with modding in the first place?
Well, first started playing Minecraft back in beta. A buddy of mine he was like, "Hey, there's this cool game." I'm like, "Oh yeah, what is it?" And he's like, "Well," and then he gets a little hesitant. He's like, "Well, you start by punching a tree." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "No, but really, it's actually really fun." So he had set up a server, and this was back in the beta days. This was like summer of 2011, um, and we started playing, and I was like, "This is fantastic." And he's like, "Did you know it's in Java?" And we were both Java guys. He was actually a coworker. Was like, what? That's cool. And so we kind of looked into doing some modding. At first, we were looking at it, and back then it was considerably, a little harder to get into than it is now. Um, but as we were playing, I kept getting lost. So that's really the reason I got into modding. Is I kept getting lost, and so I would, get a survive the night, get a little place going, go out to find supplies. I'd never be able to find the little house again. So I just had this scattering of these sad little cave houses all over, or the horrible, like cobblestone dirt towers with a torch on top to try to
Oh
find your
yeah.
way home. So I was like, ugh. And I was a Java guy, mostly doing web stuff then. I had no OpenGL or any kind of graphics side in terms of in-game stuff. I had no experience with any of that. So I was like, I wonder if I could figure out a way to embed a little tiny web server inside a mod and push map data out to that through that web server. It's like I knew I could do that. So that's how I basically got started is JourneyMap literally was only a web map that I could have in one window that would let me see where I was exploring and more importantly, find my way home again, which yeah, so I have been working on it now for I started the project on what is now Curse. It was Dev Bucket back then in September of 2011. So we just passed the 5-year mark for for JourneyMap, which is really long for one mod. But yeah, I mean, I still like to play. I play with my kids, and I get hopelessly lost if I don't have a map. So I've just been working on it ever since.
That's awesome. And you mentioned 2011. Obviously, things were there, very different back then. Were there any really other mini maps, or I guess it wasn't a mini map yet, but mapping tools at the time?
Um, there were a few. There were a few pretty neat ones that are still around in different forms, but mostly what they did was take the world data and generate a map. So like Tectonus was a really good one, and still is very cool. I love the output of it. Um, so that you could, server owners would, at night basically run a batch job to generate a new map. Um, so that people could see everything. But it didn't have it wasn't real time. So there was that. There was a few tools that did that sort of thing. Then also in the very early days there was Raise, which became Zans, which has gone back and forth in voxel map and various iterations. But at the very beginning, pretty much it was Raise um, as a mini map. And so I at the time, with having had no OpenGL experience at all, um, just didn't really want to try to compete with literally there was this one obvious choice. So people just would install the Raise for the mini map, but if they wanted something that could save where they had been so that they could go back go back and find things that they'd done before as they're mapping, then they would use JourneyMap as well. So for at least a couple of years, that was kind of just my thing. I was like, yeah, use Raise for the mini map and use JourneyMap if you want to save all the places you've been and kind of see your world mapped out. Um, then eventually, IMAZ of the FTB team, he contacted me. He's like, "Look, I love JourneyMap, but you need a mini map." Yeah, he's like, "If you would please try to do a mini map. If you could do that, I would just like to have one thing rather than have to have a couple different, and I'd like to start using it in packs." And so I was like, oh, "Okay." So I worked on that, and then that was really I got to give IMS credit for JourneyMap having any sort of success in terms of adoption rates in the community, because it was at that point then people were like, oh, good, I only have to install one thing. And it started going into the FTB packs, and things really took off in the summer of, I guess, 2014 because of that. In 1.6.4 and 1.7.10 especially became a big push for JourneyMap. Just kind of became the default for the FTB packs, and really it's been a cool ride ever since.
Oh yeah, for sure. But rewinding a little bit, when you mentioned envisioning it as kind of this web map before you implemented an in-game map, did you kind of did you use a mini map yourself, or were you just kind of having it on a second monitor or window side by side with your game?
Yeah, I used Raise, but obviously, I I relied on JourneyMap more to be able to find my way back and map out the larger landscape. So I would have the web map open in one window, and then um, a lot of people with dual monitor setups really liked that. And then just the game in the other window. And sometimes I would use Raise, and sometimes I wouldn't. I didn't care as much about the real time minimap back in the early days as just being able to find my way home at night. Now that it's been a couple of years that there's actually been an in-game map for JourneyMap, I would never go back to not having it.
Hmm.
It's definitely a crutch.
Yeah, and also I've definitely found the whole full screen, the mapping everywhere you went. I think that was a huge differentiator early on for JourneyMap.
Yeah, it was. And it was a pain to implement, but I think overall I'm really glad I did end up going with that approach. Um, so the technical challenges for me, as I already had a programming background, but getting into OpenGL for the first time just to do this mod, that was, I'd never had any sort of experience with that, and I'm still learning as I go and still finding ways to optimize things. And I'm always impressed by other modders in the community who have, such a huge in-depth knowledge of how to really improve rendering, and just trying to ask questions and get tips.
Yeah, it's amazing what people have done. Did you find that the approach you took with JourneyMap, having a server, web server basically embedded in the game, impacted performance early on?
Oh, it definitely does, because hey, a web server, a typical web browser, can have four connections going at the same time, so that when you hit a page, it's trying to pull down multiple images and CSS files and JavaScript and all that. So having to basically have four more threads in the same, memory space as Minecraft, potentially handling all of these, requests for pulling files from the web map, that's absolutely, it can't not have a performance impact. Running a web server, no matter what, is going to have a performance impact because it's doing work, and multiple threads is always going to add work. So my goal early on was just to try to make it as painless as possible, and there have definitely been times where it's been better, it's been better than more recently in terms of performance than some of the earlier iterations. Some of the conventional wisdom about you know basically adding threads in Java shouldn't really have a performance impact, turns out not to really have been true. So I got a lot of feedback at one point from the community saying, hey, look, even when nothing's going on, it's still having a performance impact. And I went and looked and like, well, okay. And so I started reducing the number of threads that were available, making the thread pool smaller. And sure enough, it really did improve things. So that was one of those things where just, hey, learning as you go. The conventional wisdom says it shouldn't matter, but it turns out it did matter, or at least it mattered in terms of the way the Minecraft process was set up. So yeah, there have been a lot of iterations where I've gotten feedback from the community of saying, hey, this this is slow on this spec of machine, or I'm having problems with this or that, and try to respond to that and find ways to make things run faster. I mean, I just checked in some more performance improvements literally last week. So it's a never-ending battle of add a feature, ruin performance, fix performance, and repeat.
Yeah. Um, One of the things is how JourneyMap is so, I guess, adaptable now. And you made a lot of changes, and of course, the game has had a lot of changes in those 5 years as well. We've seen lots of people adopting multiplayer more so, and there being more, more mod packs. Hence the whole mini map features and all the configurable options. Was that something that you envisioned originally, or was that kind of baked in later?
Well, that has been an evolution. I think probably if you're a new player to, and if you're or a new user to JourneyMap and you open up that options screen for the first time, it's probably more than a little overwhelming. Because as time has gone by, I would, originally it started where people were like, hey, I really want, I'm just going to make up an example. I really want this thing to be blue. So I'd make it blue. And then immediately other people were like, oh, I liked it when it was red. Fine. I'll make an option. And so, and so now 5 years later, hundreds of options for all sorts of things, because some people were like, oh, I want my mini map to face north. And other people were like, I want my mini map to face old north back from early beta. I was like, old north, what is that? And so I went and looked at them. You got to be kidding me. So, and then other people were like, I want it to follow the direction I want the map to rotate. So, yeah, so now you go in, you want player heading, can be north or old north, or, or player heading. So it's just been a matter of, if I get feedback for people who are like, I really would like something different, I'm looking at whether or not is this the sort of thing that's personal preference, or is this the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, I really should just change it. More often than not at this point, it's I'm adding options rather than actually changing core functionality permanently into a different direction. For example, somebody who hangs out in my IRC channel, just the last summer, this past summer, he's like, yeah, I love JourneyMap, but I hate the mini map. I was like, why do you hate the mini map? I mean, he doesn't even use the mini map. He disables it and still uses rays or voxelers, or I think he uses zeros. And I was like, okay, why? And he said, well, the mob icons are too big and they clutter it, and I don't want all that visual distraction. It's like I just want dots. It's like, so I just kind of blew it off for a while. But I thought about it and I was like, that's really not a bad idea, and maybe I could just make an icon set that's just dots. And then I got to think about it more. I was like, actually, it would be really easy just to have it be, a few textures and make that just a separate configuration. So in JourneyMap 5.3.0, which is currently in beta, hopefully releasing pretty soon, I added this. We have mob dots, and that's a completely yeah, I couldn't think of a better name, and nobody's given me one yet, of just showing colored dots. And if you've played Grand Theft Auto or seen screenshots of it, the dots look a lot like the radar dots there, where they're color coded based on passive or hostile, player or villager, and they have there's a little vertical chevron that points up if they're above you in elevation and points down if they're below you in elevation, and then a little nub on the side that shows you what direction they're facing. But I have grown to just love using mob dots. I don't even want the icons anymore. There was at one point I was like, maybe I'm just going to get rid of the icons altogether. But I step back from that because there are still people who really want it. So yeah, yet another example of somebody gives me feedback and I add an option, and now there's many more options rather than just evolving the game. The game just gets, or involving the mod, just making it, I guess, more configurable.
Yeah, the customizability initially really actually surprised me because I always knew about JourneyMap, but I was kind of one of those people like, I don't really know about the mini map because I really didn't like the interface and the way it looked in game. And then I was talking to Cyanide X, who people may have heard of, about it, and he said, oh, you can just change all that, right? And I could make it square, I could make it have no frame, I could make it a little translucent, all the stuff that I wanted, and then I just had basically an almost perfect mini map. I'm like, oh, this is nice.
Yep, just death by configuration, I guess, is what it comes down to. And I go back and forth a lot on. I really want the defaults to be something that most people would be happy with and just leave it alone. And I do see even streamers and stuff, and I'm like, oh, you left it on the defaults. The way you're playing, with your screen size, you should totally make that a rectangle, and you should totally, um, a lot of people just install it. Okay, good enough. And then there are other people who, really want to tweak all the little bits and pieces. And I wish I could find a way to, to appeal to, because like your experience, you didn't like the way the defaults looked, and so you just assumed that's the way it was. And I'd love to find a way to prove that. But so many different preferences, and with a user base of, I guess on a monthly basis, it's well over 1 million active players using JourneyMap. I don't know that I'll ever actually find a consensus on what things should look like. Hence all the options.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a very difficult design decision just to make, because the unfortunate truth is 90% of people probably will use the default and assume that is just the way it is.
Right. Right. Yeah, I made a point in the last year or so of adding a splash screen where when you load up JourneyMap, if it says, oh, it looks and sees if it doesn't have active config files for that current version yet, it shows a little splash screen with what's new. So that the first time you bring up the full screen map, it checks and it shows you that what's new dialog box with clickable line items. So it says, hey, there's now mop dots. And if you click on that, it'll take you right to the option where that sort of thing. Because, most people don't read release notes, and, don't follow me on Twitter, and they just see a version number change and they install it and they don't really know what's in there. So that's one of the ways I'm trying to make it a little more accessible to the regular player to bring things to their attention. But I'm always looking for feedback on how to improve that too, because I want people to know. I don't want to just do all this work and then have it be buried in options somewhere. Make it useful.
Right, that's a nice way to implement it because, I'm never a fan of those mods. Like, the minute you load up your game, they have a bunch of notifications that pop up. It's nice to kind of have it pop up when they actually open the full screen map or engage in it in some way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Especially mod pack developers hate it with all the text notifications. So
Big
yeah,
Reactors has an update, etc. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned, you mentioned people, who use Xeros or voxel map. Those maps, people also still use those, and of course, lots of people use JourneyMap. Um, have you seen any influence, kind of your ideas from those mods, or those mods' ideas coming into JourneyMap? Like, what kind of features have you seen cross-adopted?
Um, I mean, I definitely in the early stages of me doing the mini map development, I definitely was looking and seeing it how at the time Zans and voxel map were the two big active ones. How did they do things? And um, and when I added waypoints, one of the first, how did they do waypoints? And some of it was, there's always, flattery is, imitation is the best form of flattery. There's that, and also what are people already used to, and even things like, okay, how does voxel map export its waypoints so that I could make it so that if people wanted to switch to JourneyMap, they could import voxel or Zan's waypoint files, and I could pull them in. But I also made it so that I could export them back out. I did that in the early days because it was more I wanted players just to be able to have the choice and not have a lot of heartburn. And frankly, too, I also didn't want to have to deal with a lot of complaints. So here, if you want to import them, fine. If you want to export them and use the other one, fine. I don't care. So there was definitely that. And since then, there have been a couple of projects that have, and I'm forgetting the name of one of them. I remember somebody contacted me early with some ideas. And I was like, yeah, those are good ideas. And he's like, I'm just going to do my own. Okay. So he went off and basically started his own project. And and open sourced it. And it gained some traction for a while, but he moved on to other things, and the project kind of died. And so I could see a lot of things that were definitely, I won't say copied, but maybe inspired by JourneyMap. The Minimap mods, since JourneyMap has come out, I don't know. I haven't used them a whole lot. So to be honest with you, I couldn't point and say, oh, look, this is definitely a JourneyMap thing. For a lot of the features, I can say that the voxel map guy and I have been in semi-regular contact, and we've talked and deliberately made choices to be compatible with each other on a couple of things. And we even talked about some of the things that I've done with JourneyMap server in terms of getting server owners the capability of disabling certain functions, so that they're like, hey, I really don't want you to have player radar in this dimension, or I don't want cave mapping on it all because it's too cheaty or whatever, in giving servers the ability to control those things. So in terms of like even the packet format of communicating between client and server, Voxelmap guy and I have talked about, I even gave him code from JourneyMap so he could see exactly what we're doing, so that if somebody is running Voxelmap server stuff, it will also control those features in JourneyMap and vice versa. So there's definitely been, I really like, I think some people are surprised when they hear about our interactions. I don't really view it as a competition. I mean, sometimes I feel competitive, but I don't really view it as that as much as I want people to play Minecraft and have fun. And compatibility usually makes things easier for everybody except for the developer. So I don't mind taking a little extra time to work out the kinks with the Voxelmap guy to try to make that just an easier experience for server owners and players.
Hmm. Yeah, I've definitely noticed the voxel map interaction because I think voxel map a while ago added the whole full screen map thing, and
Mhm.
then voxel map had this pretty neat system for dynamically doing the mob icons that I think JourneyMap has now.
Well, so I don't know. I'll have to look and see if he's done something super awesome that I'm gonna have to ask him how he did. Try to reverse engineer it. So the interesting challenge with mob icons has always been, how do you really show the face of a mob when there is no standard model format that says this is the face?
Hmm.
And if you think about something like, okay, the face of a cow is pretty recognizable because literally the front of the cow is just flat that flat surface. But if you think about the face of a bat, or the face of a villager, or the face of a dog, it is not a flat face. And so there's ears and noses and things, and spiders and so forth, where you can't just pick one texture, or one part of the mob texture and say this is the face. It's really just like you couldn't say the skin on your face is your face. It's the composite of your nose and your eyes and everything.
Hmm.
So what Zanz and Rays did very early on is they said, okay, this section of the cow texture is where the face is, and they would just pick that square by coordinates, and that's what they'd use. And that worked with texture maps, that worked with texture packs, now resource packs, fine, because even if you made a bigger version of the cow, the same relative coordinates worked. And so that's how they did that. What doesn't work is adding in mobs from other mob packs. So perhaps they've added a way to do that coordinate, have external coordinates for any of these other, custom mods, that have mobs, I should say. But you can't, as far as I've been able to figure out, there's no way to just automatically figure out how to make a decent icon out of any given custom mob's face. So the decision I went with was, I'm just going to make a bunch of icons for the vanilla mobs. And if a mod comes out with its own mobs, then you could add icons for those into a certain folder in the JourneyMap, into the JourneyMap folder, so that people could say, oh, look, I play Pixelmon. We've got, 100 Pixelmon icons that you can just drop in and then you'll have icons for all those. So I went with the icon approach, and so far I've stayed with it just because, um, crafting an icon is a lot different than just getting a square off of a texture, especially like I said, because of all the facial features. So I personally have just gone with that because I think it's an overall better solution, although not nearly as satisfying as just having magic happen automatically.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things that's new in JourneyMap 5.3 is that I've gone to a completely resource location based way of grabbing those icons, so that instead of people having to drop in icons into a folder in their game, now I've made it so that mods that add mobs can simply add a certain path in their mod, and I will pick up that icon. Um, Mod pack developers can also do the same thing, and yeah, resource pack developers can drop in icons and completely replace the ones that I've and add ones for other mods and so forth. So I'm trying to now make that even more easier for people to just bundle their own icons. And I'm hoping that that becomes just an obvious enough way to get it done that maybe other mods will start like Voxel will start doing the same thing and use those same locations.
Yeah. Have you found that mod compatibility has been good so far in general?
You mean in
In
terms
terms of
of?
mod authors adopting this resource idea.
Oh, it's brand new. I mean, so it's been in. So the first version of the beta came out just a couple of weeks ago, and the second version came out 5 days ago. So I know of at least a couple of mod authors that are working on making their own icons, but I haven't. Nobody's come up and said, "Oh, look, I did all this." So it takes a while. Making icons is kind of a pain. So,
Or you could just do dots.
or you could just do dots, right? So the mob dots definitely solves that problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that has happened lately is the modded landscape has changed a lot. Like I mentioned, there's stuff like Zero's minimap that kind of reinvents the minimap and aesthetically by making it look like vanilla Minecraft. And then there's stuff like JEI that takes a tool that people use like forever, not enough items, and reinvents that. With this kind of changing landscape, and of course, tech mods are completely in flux now because of 110. Um, have you had to make any changes on your end of things, or has it been pretty easy to adapt because it's a utility like a mini map?
yeah, usually the impacts on JourneyMap are mostly just, oh, look, the names of a bunch of code things changed in Minecraft that I now have to basically move code or rename things to get it to work again. And for the most part, that's I have probably had less heartburn than mods that change gameplay because of that. Because really, I mean, JourneyMap is essentially plumbing. It isn't, or at least people think of it as plumbing now. It's a feature that you add on, doesn't change gameplay. Hopefully, it enhances your experience. Um, Whereas, like you're saying, these other like tech mods and stuff, they're having to rewrite incredible amounts of things to handle in-game changes. So for the most part, that's been true. I definitely get off easy in a lot of ways. Um, and then there are some super brutal updates, like going from 1.7.10 to 1.8.9 and 1.10. That gap between 1.7 and 1.8 forward was huge because JourneyMap is basically scanning the area around you as you're running around, and needs to, for every block location on the surface, go look and see what that block is, look up what its color is that it calculates, load the mod, and then stick that color into, an image tile, and then save that out to disk. And so, there's a lot of location-based queries and everything. 1.7.10 went from XYZ integers or to in 1.8, and later went to an object called block pods. And so I had to change hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of places of lines of code and really overhaul things. And block state was another thing that's made a huge change for everybody who's modded. And a lot of people just rage quit. At that point, they're like, I really just don't want to rewrite my mod, and so they just stopped modding altogether. So some of what you mentioned about the landscape changing has definitely been because the game is changing, and some of that has been because mods were unwilling to change, and so they're like, I want 710 and done. That's it. Um, so there is an interesting segment of the Minecraft modded community that basically said we're not leaving 1.7.10.
Hmm.
This is the last version for us.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, and there's even worse situations like Thaumcraft, which actually made a big deal about kind of Thaumcraft 5 being 1.8, and then changes in 1.9 and 1.10 kind of made Asinor decide to just rewrite the whole thing, which is what
Right,
he's doing now. So there's
right.
situations like that where it's kind of a mess in between a mess, essentially.
Yeah. Towards that, it's like we all want to see new stuff happen in the game, and we all kind of, but as modders, the general reaction that I see is we all get kind of cringy when a new version is going to come out. And, and Mojang went from, you know, averaging a new release every 6 months to all of a sudden it was like 1.8, 1.89, 1.91, and it was like boom, 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 and just kept going and going. And it was discouraging because you have to make so many changes. And it isn't just we make changes and now we're all on the new version. I still have a huge player base in 1.7.10 and some in 1.8.9, some in 1.9.4, and some in 1.10. And none of that code is, I can't just make a change and then propagate it across all the places without significant heartburn in some areas. So maintaining multiple versions of JourneyMap actively is a heck of a lot of work, and essentially takes away from me being able to add new features. So, I know a lot of other modders who are just like, once I move to the new version, I'm not going back. So if you're still playing an older version of Minecraft, you're stuck on it. And I can completely respect and understand that decision. And every now and then, I just have to say, I can't support this version anymore. There's just been too many changes since then, and I can't work in parallel across all this stuff. So, for example, 1.7.10 for me is done. 1.8.9 or any of the 1.8s are done. I'm still supporting 1.9.4 and 110.2 now, but it's still a lot of work. So
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And 1.9.4 and 1.10 too, I guess those aren't so different fundamentally, but of course they are different versions, so there will always be changes. But yeah,
it's minor enough that most mods are compatible from one to. And the Forge guys actually just kind of did a little hackery so that in most cases 1.9.4 mods can work just fine.
yeah, which is pretty neat.
Yeah,
Hopefully we'll see that with future stuff like 1.11 or similar situations where it's not too painful.
right. Yeah, and two, where I think we're getting towards the end of the Java Minecraft lifecycle. Um, I don't know what will be the last PC Java version, but I think we're going to find. I think we'll see it probably in the next year or two. Um, I know at Minecon, the videos are out for this now, where Sarge showed off the infant plugin system for Pocket you know Pocket Edition Minecraft and Windows 10 Minecraft, which are using the same .NET code base. And Sarge has been actively working with Java, the Java modding community, um, to understand, to try to basically understand what modders need and what modders need to do. And he's been using that to inform the new plugin system for future editions of Minecraft that will be that are written in C#, so a different programming language. So you'll get a different group of modders in a lot of cases. But C# and Java are pretty close. So people who are willing to make the transition, I think it will mean probably rewriting mods completely. So that I know I've gone off on a little tangent here, but the modding landscape is going to change no matter what when a new version comes out. But there will be a point where Mojang/Microsoft is saying we're not doing the Java PC version anymore. Everything is going to be .NET, and they're doing that for very good reasons, which is to get their code base sane. Because with all the consoles and all the platforms, having one C++ code base does them a lot of good in terms of being able to make updates across all those platforms for all the same reasons that modders don't like having to keep changing between versions. So I think within the next couple of years we'll see that that PC Java Minecraft modding there is a version that will be and then a lot of people will just stay on that and play that, and some modders or new modders will say, hey, I'm going to make the jump over and start doing the new .NET C# stuff for the the native plugin system, and there will be a whole new set of gameplay. I'm personally excited about it. I like to see what happens with those changes.
Yeah, it is crazy. I think there is some people have this pessimistic view that, oh, it's terrible, it's Microsoft, it's going to be proprietary, everything, blah, whatever. But I do find it exciting that the possibility that Pocket, the console, and the Windows 10 editions, and I guess eventually they'll probably do an OS 10 version or Mac OS, that is kind of the future of where things are going, and it's going to be very interesting to see how mods adopt that, because the plugin system is so early on, and I think right now the only thing people can really do is just add mob AI and new models.
Yeah, well, there's that add-on stuff of changing behaviors and that sort of thing. But the plugin system that Sarge has, definitely you're adding code and you can do more, but like you said, it really is in its infancy. And and Sarge has been very active with the modding community, and he has consistently been asking for feedback, and and getting lists of open source Java mods so that he can see what people are doing. And he's one of the guys that started Java modding in the first place in Minecraft. He's one of the founding creators of MCP, which is Forge eventually. So he's been in the scene since the very beginning. So you can't, nobody can really say, oh, Microsoft's going to screw this up, because basically one of the guys who invented Minecraft modding is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
He's just having to do it in the ecosystem of the .NET world with the C# and stuff. But he's making sure that the C# is done in mono, which means it's open source and multi-platform, so that you could write your stuff. You could write it on the Mac, you could write it on Linux. You don't have to buy Visual Studio for the lots of bags of money, or you can use free versions of stuff. So I have absolute confidence in Sarge that he's going to do the best job possible. Given the constraints of needing to be in the .NET code base. I'm excited. I don't think a lot of mods will migrate over, because I don't think it'll be migrating. I think for the most part it's a complete rewrite. I mean, there might be some code that you could transform from Java into C#. Maybe somebody could come up with some cool tools to do that, maybe. But for the most part, mods in the new plugin system, I think, will probably just be complete rewrites.
Yeah, probably not much more reused than textures and sounds.
Right. And the hard work of all the design decisions.
Yeah, mechanically, the
Right.
creative stuff, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, re-implementing JourneyMap in C# would be a heck of a lot of work, but I've already made decisions on how things are supposed to work, so it's really replicating functionality rather than starting from scratch.
So you're already kind of planning for that future?
Planning, I think it's premature to plan. I mean, hey, Mojang said they were going to come out with them years ago. So it's just fun to see anything at this point. So waiting until it's mature enough to handle the features that I need to have in there, it'll a couple of years. But I love learning new stuff. So for me, I've done C# at work every now and then, and I think it's fun to grab and get into a new language again. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Until it's mature enough to really be able to make that move, I won't. I'm basically watching with interest at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. In regards to JourneyMap and just your modding projects, do you see yourself pursuing any new features in JourneyMap or new mods in the near future?
Yeah, I know. I love you interview guys and like people out there like iChun who've done like 30, like hats or tails or whatever. And they're cool and they're popular, and I'm always amazed at just broad the breadth that people tackle. Where I've just got, hey, I've been working on one mod for 5 years. I actually do have and intended to have basically an add-on for JourneyMap that doesn't come with it, but that adds some in-game functionality. And that's all I'm going to say about it yet at this point, because I did get a fair amount of work on it, and then I had to stop for personal reasons. So I'm hoping to get back to that. I'd very much like to get that out there especially for some mod pack developers that really want basically in-game ways to control JourneyMap features, so that you could start doing progression-based feature unlocks for JourneyMap. And so this would be an add-on, rather. So if you just want your mini map, you don't care, JourneyMap, you got it. But if you're developing a mod pack where you want an experience where getting features in the map are a privilege that you earn through work, like other modding, tech trees, then that will be an option. So I'm working on that, kind of on a hiatus right now. But CyanidX, as you mentioned earlier, has agreed to help me out with the artwork so that it looks awesome. And I'm hoping to get back into that, and maybe we'll see it by Christmas.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So that would kind of, I guess, take this whole theme of mod packs that have been doing this progression questing stuff to a whole new level when you take something that people take for granted, like a mini map, and start, I guess, gamifying it.
Right. And I've talked to a couple of people at Mojang, and the first time I ever talked to Grum, he's like, I don't like JourneyMap. I'm like, oh, why not? He's like, it's too overpowered. So he wasn't complaining about the functionality. He was complaining about, he thought it was too cheaty. You need to be able to craft your map just like Minecraft does. That was his perspective, and I totally get that. And for a lot of people, they absolutely feel the same way. So yeah, so wanting to make that part of the progression is something that I've had in the back of my mind. Honestly, very early on, I made decisions not to do in-game stuff because I really didn't want, especially bucket servers back in the day, were basically selling modded features to make money. And I really didn't want, first of all, that's in violation of the EULA. And I really didn't want people having to pay to have a mini map. It's like, either let them have JourneyMap or don't, but don't make them pay to have it. I disliked that. And it wasn't about the money, like, oh, I'm not getting that money. It's just like, don't make some 10-year-old kid ask his mom for a credit card so that he can have a mini map on a server because he's getting owned by people who do. I hate that idea. So I think we're past the point where servers are still able to get away with that enough, that I'm more comfortable with adding the in-game stuff. And there was always going to be some jerky server owner who does that. And maybe I shouldn't call them jerky, because you got to make money to support your server somehow, and I understand that. But hey, the EULA says you can't sell gameplay for money. So that's Minecraft's EULA. So that's I think I'd like to offer this in-game functionality, and hopefully it won't be abused.
Yeah, because some stuff like Antique Atlas, when that came out, people freaked out over that, because I think it really was something that no one had seen before. So anything like that is definitely, I think, going to be appreciated by mod pack authors and people who like to have more of an immersive experience with their mini maps.
Right.
And one more thing about mod packs. How do you approach permissions with mod packs nowadays?
And this has been my policy has been pretty much the same for the last maybe 2-3 years, which is essentially, if you want to include JourneyMap, that's fine, but it needs to be downloaded from basically my CDN, which I'm using on Curse. So as long as your mod pack or launcher is pulling JourneyMap per player, a download per player from my CDN, that's that's basically been my condition. So AT Launcher has always done that, or has always had that as an option. So direct link permission for AT Launcher has been granted pretty much forever. Curse does that. So the Curse app does that. Feed the Beast was grandfathered in back in the old days because they, early on they're like, hey, we're going to be going to that model very soon. So can we please do it now? And so I said, okay, conditional that you guys move to a, basically giving mod authors credit for each download. Because Feed the Beast releases a new mod pack, they get 1 million downloads in a week. And back in the old days, mod authors didn't get any credit for any of that in any way, either even just in statistics. So money aside or reward points aside, or it was completely opaque to them. So I just have been like, hey, if people are going to use it, all I want to know is I just want to see that number counter go up. That's I want to know, because when people stop using it, I'm going to stop developing. So in terms of mod packs in general, other than that period of time where Feed the Beast was bundling everything in a zip, and I said that was okay just for Feed the Beast. Anybody else that's come to me and said, hey, as long as your launcher pulls JourneyMap, from the Curse CDN, that's fine. So there's a page on my website that's got that. Technic is one of those mod packs or mod pack frameworks that doesn't do that, and they don't do governance in terms of keeping track and making sure that people are using mods the way the mod pack authors have given permission. So Technic has always sort of been a sore spot, because I really want to support people who use Technic, but they're violating my terms of use. However, I do have a solder.io alternative for Technic. I even have made a point of generating a solder compatible download for all of my for all of the versions of JourneyMap that are released. So if you go in on CurseForge, you can get the solder.io zip, so that you can pull it down in real time for those permissions. So I'm trying to accommodate them. I just need, just ask that people just honor my wishes that I get that download credit.
Yeah, it's nice to see that kind of made, because I feel like most of the big packs on Technic are probably using solder, and so that they have the option to kind of implement that. That's good to see. And of course, ATL, Curse, and FTB, all of those can now download with Curse. So looks like, I think it shouldn't be a problem for most packs.
Right.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been awesome having you on. Do you have any more closing thoughts?
Nope. Just I do. If you go to journeymap.info, is how you can get information and downloads, and there's a link for support. You have an IRC channel on Aspernet, which is JourneyMap, and feel free to drop in anytime and hang out or ask questions or for help. And yeah, just love to hear from people. That'd be great.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And thank you all of you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. See you in the next one. Goodbye.